And it would be appropriate to make sure it recenters, get back into the middle of your setup. And from there, we continuously push forward, giving me the best chance to strike ball then turf. Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to be discussing number one question that I get when people walk into my studio, which is, Jay, how can I get more consistency? And today I'm going to cover off probably the number one thing that I see when players ask me that question. So let's get into it. So for me, the biggest thing that leads to inconsistencies is contact, okay? And contact for me is my number one priority when looking at players. Ball striking, ground connection is absolutely a non-negotiable. Now, there are many non-negotiables in the golf swing, as in different matchups, different arm planes, different wrist angles and grips. But one thing that we'll find amongst the greatest golfers on the planet is their strike. They hit with an iron, ball first contact all of the time. And we're going to talk about that today, which is low point control. And what is low point control? Now, low point is where the bottom of our swing arc is in relation to that golf ball. So if I make a backswing here, this is the highest point of the arc, and down here is the lowest point of the arc. But we don't want the lowest point of the arc to be underneath the golf ball with an iron. We would like that low point to be ahead of the golf ball. Now, just to give you a number on that, I like to see the low point with a mid-iron around 4, maybe 5 inches after the golf ball. And I'm going to be discussing 3 things which really affect that, starting from setup all the way to how your wrist release. So we are going to start with setup. Now, firstly, I want you to picture this. I want you to understand that we need the bottom of our club to hit the golf ball and then the turf. Now, again, like I said there, we would like that to hit the turf around, let's just say 4 inches after the golf ball. If we are moving off the golf ball too much and struggle to recover, then we are already a few inches behind the golf ball and have a lot of ground to make up. So staying a little bit more central, I think, is going to be a little more helpful. And that starts with setup, making sure that our setup is appropriate. And what I often see happen is players will come in and their hips sit too far behind the golf ball. Their shaft can sit too much behind the golf ball. Their ribs can sit too much behind the golf ball. And you can imagine from here, it's going to be pretty difficult for me to hit down on that golf ball and compress it, especially when, as I said there, we're looking for our low point to be after the golf ball. So making sure that when we address the golf ball, the ball position is in the right space. So for a mid-iron, centered to just forward of center is good. Making sure that our hips are sat fractionally forward, okay? Making sure that our weight distribution is around 55 to 60% on our lead side for a mid-iron. And lastly, making sure our handle is pointing at our left groin. Now, providing I've got my weight a little bit forward, my hips a bit forward, shaft a bit forward, and my chest on top of the golf ball, I believe I have the best chance to make a centered pivot and hit after the golf ball. Again, picture those bits that are back here. That is going to make life more awkward, and I've got a lot of compensations to make throughout the duration of the swing. Which brings me on to the second part, which is getting your weight forward. Now, the weight will move around for the golf swing, okay? It will move a little bit off the ball, but I believe for a mid-iron, it would be appropriate to make sure it recenters, get back into the middle of your setup, and from there we continuously push forward, giving me the best chance to strike ball then turf. And I'm going to show you a great drill that you can do at home. So I've just got a little wedge here that I got from Amazon, and I am going to pop that under the outside of my right shoe, and that is making my shoe arch a little bit inwards like so. So from here, I can really feel where my weight is, but I can feel it's actually quite difficult for me to move off the ball here, okay? I can feel I can move off to start with, but as I get up to the top, it makes life more difficult. And from here, I want to actually push myself off of the wall of the wedge. So as I get to here, I can push myself back into the middle with ease. And again, staying a little bit more centered is just going to give me the best chance to strike ball then turf. So again, if I'm here and I can move around a little bit to start with, but then I'm going to push off of that wedge back into the middle, and it makes me want to start moving ahead of the golf ball with my lower half. I can feel that as I do that, I move into my lead knee and I start to press forward. My arms come forward, my weight and hips are forward, and I can now see that I'm going to strike the ground here. Now, one thing is really important to remember here. We don't necessarily want our upper body to travel too far with us, okay? So when I'm doing that drill, my upper body is staying pretty much where it is. It'll move a little bit forward, but my hips are moving forward. Now, what we don't want to do is get our head in front of our hips when we do this, because that's going to make the shaft pitch quite steep. So from here, if I got my head in front of my pelvis, you can see where that shaft will go. Whereas if I go to the top again, just using this wedge, and I keep my chest here and I push off of that, you can see some separation now. You can see that my hips are leading the swing. My chest is coming in second. And from a down the line view, you'll notice that as I do that, it's much more easy to keep my chest more closed and for the club to be coming down a little bit more shallow and from behind me into the golf ball. So again, organising the way that we do it, not just trying to kick off the wedge and throw myself forward. But while we've got the wedge, again, imagine if I had the wedge on this foot and I pushed or loaded away from the golf ball like this. Okay, I stretched way behind it for too long. Okay, so when I get to the top, I'm a few inches behind that. I've got 6, maybe 7 inches to come back forward, and that's just leaving it a little bit to chance, and I want to make sure that my strike point is quite predictable. So by staying a little bit more centered, I feel like that I've only got to go across a couple of inches, and again, I can strike anywhere between the golf ball and a few inches ahead as my strike point, whereas if I move off the ball too much, I have made that strike point way, way bigger. Now, the third and final piece that I see most regular when I'm on the lesson tee is people releasing their wrists too early, okay? Now, what I'd see is players go to the top, release their angles or lose all of this too soon, and that can really make me ground out early rather than after the ball. It can make me hit the ground too soon. I can lose strike, I can lose loft, and I can certainly lose a lot of that compression. So making sure that we come down and my right wrist is still loaded and then unloading it at the right time. Now, I tend to find that players really struggle when they start to think about the hands, certainly at the bottom of the swing. It becomes quite inconsistent actually, and they really struggle to find strike. So I feel like I can trick my players into doing this. Now, I ask them, how would you hit a low shot? And certainly no one ever answers, I'm going to have my weight back here, shaft back here, because you can see how that's going to attack the golf ball. So just by getting them to practice with no real swing thoughts at all on hitting the ball a little bit lower, how would you do that? I straight away see them stay more centered and hold on to that wrist for longer, because they wouldn't really do this to hit the golf ball low. And I might even start to ask them to stop a little bit shorter, and I'd probably see when I video it them finish a little bit more like this. So you can certainly do that too. Let's just assume I've got a good setup and I'm not moving off the golf ball, and then from here trying to hit some lower flighted shots where I really get ball first. So from here, just practicing that lower flighted shot, just with a little sawn off finish. And again there, I just wanted to try and see if I could get my hands in front of the golf ball. And that felt lovely. And I can see here I hit 3.5 inches after the golf ball. So one more time. Good setup. Handle forward, staying centered, and just trying to picture flighting that golf ball a little bit lower. And again, I know that's going to look a little bit more like this through impact. So there is just a very small kind of trick that you can play on yourself to encourage a little more sharpening. Now, I hope that short video made a lot of sense into how you can be more consistent and how low point is really, really important. A ball first contact is so vital when it comes to being more consistent. So I hope you liked the video, and if you did like it, please give it the thumbs up. And if you could subscribe, it would mean a lot. Thanks, and I'll see you soon.